stamp his authority on this match with a win with the white pieces. So I'm not sure exactly what opening he'll go for. He goes for the English opening. We're happy here on the panel. And okay, both sides big experts on this opening.
And did we see this one in the World Championship match?
We did.
I think in just one game, but that varied very quickly. This is a brand new position between these two, at least in recent history. And, OK, right now, will Magnus bring out the white knight from the king side? Will he just push a pawn? This position is still relatively well known. And Simon, you're a big English opening expert.
Yes, the first opening I ever played was the English, and I guess it kind of suits us, doesn't it, being from England? And it's I think it's a really good opening nowadays at top level because E4, the king's pawn opening, it runs into the Berlin, which is incredibly well analysed and is pretty equal. If you push the queen's pawn on move one, again, it's so well analysed. But when you play the English, you're going for maybe not a big advantage, but you're keeping the pieces on the board, and nothing hasn't been as analysed as much as the other openings. So you keep better winning chances alive, I feel. And what we're actually seeing occur on the board now is a reverse Sicilian. So this often occurs in this line in the English where white actually is playing the Sicilian defence, which is an opening you play with the black pieces, but you have an extra tempo. And that cuts out a lot of the dangerous lines which you may well face with the black pieces. Already, I guess, black should be equal, but we've got a position with a lot of play, which is good.
Yeah, and Magnus, especially in the last couple of years, tends to like these types of openings just because they are so flexible. Pawn structure tends to be very mobile. White can, I assume, capture this knight back with a pawn and then push forward in the centre. Meanwhile, black will be aiming for quick piece development. Black next move is pretty much guaranteed now. He's going to move the dark squared bishop out the way and get the black king to safety. He's going to castle. OK, he does take with the queen, white here.
It's the second choice in my database. It's much more common to capture with the B pawn.
Yeah, and the reason I'm surprised is because Magnus has won many great victories with that pawn structure, including against Anish Giri, by taking with the pawn towards the centre. Instead, the white queen on a decent square, but might get hit and attacked later on. So black did indeed bring the bishop out, white gaining some space, pushing some pawns forward on the queen side. I'm expecting black to castle, and the reason I'm slightly scared to play these positions as white and also to play the Sicilian defence, as you mentioned, Simon, from the black side, is because look at those pieces still asleep next to white's king.
Yeah, I mean...
It's going to take a while to get organised.
That's right. I mean, what they generally say about the Sicilian, which is what Magnus is really playing here, is that white has the better pawn structure because white has more pawns in the centre of the board, the centre being the most important part of the board. But white's pieces can be very, very bad. And black has a space advantage and black has the better development. So there's kind of some short-term dangers to white's position. But if you get into an ending, then white generally will always be better because he has that better structure. So that's really what Magnus will be trying to do here, get some pieces off, I guess, get into an ending.
But actually, he's breathing life maybe into a line that isn't actually traditionally considered to be the best one for white, because here in my database, there's maybe 10 games, and there are already 4 victories for the black side. So I don't know, I'm kind of curious to see what Magnus Carlsen has up his sleeve.
Yeah, it is a very risky strategy, what white's doing, just delaying piece development, pushing pawns instead. Jan's last move as black, bringing the bishop out. I mean, that's surprising to me. I would have just castled the black king away without really thinking. But then again, I guess possibly one of the ideas as black is to actually play on the side that white has been advancing. Maybe black at some point will start pushing pawns. The black A pawn can come down the board, undermining the white pawns that have just pushed forward. So flexible play by both sides. It feels like they're both going to be freestyling over the next few moves, and it will come down to who can just place their pieces on the best squares. So I'm expecting Magnus, as a matter of urgency, to start developing some of those white pieces we see in the corner there. Because if he doesn't, it might be too late. As Jovanka mentioned, black has a great score from this type of position. And that's just because black's plans are much easier than white's, maybe.
Yeah, and I can tell you that, just checking the database, no one has ever played the move that Nepomniachtchi has played. Wow. So that's it. You know, you kind of hit it spot on when you said they're freestyling, and now they most certainly will be. And, wow, interesting position here. And if you guys at home want to be involved in the conversation, in all the action, then don't hesitate to tweet us your chess questions using the hashtag #ChessChamps. We also really like to see your selfies. Show us where you're watching the show from, how you're watching it, and we will feature them.
Definitely.
Okay, meanwhile, Magnus just bringing his knight out. Very sensible move, finally starting to focus on his piece development. And Simon, whose position would you prefer here? It's already imbalanced. It's likely we're going to get a big fight in this one with both sides trying to attack.
Yeah, generally, I always like playing the side which has the more space. I find it easier to find the right plan when I've got more space to maneuver. And in this position, actually, black has more space because white's kind of really huddled on the first 3 rows and black has that 4th row. Black can very easily castle here, has a little bit better development. So I would actually take black in this position because it's easier to play. I'm wondering, I don't think he's going to do it. I really hope he does. I really hope Jan is going to go queenside, which looks kind of suicidal when white's already advanced his pawns up the board. But when you have castling on opposite sides of the board, it makes the position extremely interesting. I don't think he's going to do it, but I would love it if he did, because it would be, you know, really dynamic and interesting move. I mean, the other thing you can do as black is try to connect your pawn in the centre with another pawn. So you can move Freddy up the board, maybe even 2 squares at some stage, castle kingside, and try to start an attack with those 2 pawns. Also, this idea black has of moving the knight into the centre in some positions is what white needs to watch out for in this kind of Sicilian structure.
Yeah, I was actually going to show this because on the last move, Magnus decided to focus on bringing his pieces out, which is very wise. Some players at home might have been thinking, OK, I can push this pawn even further forward, gain even more space, kicking away the black knight. But this would have run into a really thematic, typical type of sacrifice here. Black could bring his knight into the middle, as Simon mentioned. And due to tension along this line, white cannot actually capture this knight. If you take with a pawn, then suddenly, whoops, that's a discover check, and the white queen next move will fall. And likewise, if the white knight had captured, then after this trade, still a pin on this line, and after white's queen takes this pawn, there would have been a nasty pin and a bit of a skewer along this line. The white queen moving out the way would drop the white rook. So Magnus bringing out his bishop on the last turn instead. Very sensible. Develop your pieces first and then push pawns later. And Jan just pushes this pawn to solidify his stronghold in the centre. Actually, Simon, I think you're right. I think he's gearing up at some point, if he can, to castle this way and then maybe launch these pawns down the board. I'm hoping that is the case.
Yeah, because I love it when you have opposite side castling, because I love attacking chess, and opposite side castling always leads to, well, material becomes less relevant. You just have to throw all your pawns and pieces at your opponent's king, and you get this really exciting game. So fingers crossed Jan is going to go queenside here in the position. It does seem so risky with white having an open file towards the black king, and also that pawn sort of already ready to pounce over there. But, you know, what do you reckon?
I would be very nervous to do that, precisely because of the reasons that you mentioned, and also because I would be afraid, if I were to focus on the right side, I would be afraid that black's attack is a little bit too slow, because yes, you can push the pawns forward, but how long would it take before I even get into contact with the white pawn?
It does seem slow, and tempo is so important in these positions, because if you're slower than your opponent, you're going to lose, generally. Right. It's the kind of thing Jan should be going for, as we discussed earlier on, that Jan wants to get a dynamic position. This move that Magnus played is probably... Oh, hello, he's come in.
Wow, OK. What a move by Jan Nepomniachtchi, jumping in. I don't think it's a pawn sacrifice, because now, again, if pawn takes knight, this is check, a discovered check, and the white queen will drop on the next move. And as you mentioned, Ivanka, white can take this knight with his own knight, but this pawn is now poisoned. If white gets tempted to take it with his queen, then again, this idea of the skewer along this diagonal. The queen will move out of the way, but the white bishop will drop behind it. So really sneaky from Jan Nepomniachtchi. And maybe he's just set a trap for Magnus, and Magnus has walked right into it, because now it's a bit uncomfortable for white. Maybe white just ignores it, or maybe white trades a set of knights and then just moves the queen out the way. OK, I think this is going to happen. He's not going to take this pawn. He's just going to move his queen. But the problem is, where do you move it to? You could drop it back and argue that, OK, it was just a fair trade. But somehow it feels like maybe the momentum is in black's favour, despite what the evaluation bar says. let's go back to the players. It's heating up with this flurry of tactics already starting early in the game.
Are we seeing what you sort of asked from Jan in this game? His style, is he bringing his style to this game?
Feels like he's definitely trying.
Yeah.
Magnus so far just trying to neutralise him after this kind of flashy knight move into the centre. Magnus just saying, OK, I'm just going to trade off pieces, going to retreat, going to just be super solid and try and lock things down. But Jan, as black, you can't really ask for a more dynamic position from the opening, right?
Yeah, it looks good. I mean, it's kind of strange that all the knights have been exchanged off already. So in some ways, that's also going towards what Magnus probably wants with his structure, like those extra pawns in the middle. He wants to exchange pieces off, but only bishops on the boards is really quite interesting. And I think it's going to come down to if White can get castled, I expect White's going to be better here. White wants to castle kingside because he's got a nice structure, he's got some nice advanced pawns, slightly better bishops. Is there any way that Jan, he's got 2 moves to do that. White just wants to move his bishop, that hasn't been developed, move his king. Can Jan stop Magnus from castling? Because if you can, then you keep this kind of initiative going. Is there any way you can do that, do you think, David, here?
Yeah, that's the key question, right? And I'm struggling to find a way immediately unless you start pushing pawns as black, but that involves some risk as well. Any pawns that black pushes forward will leave weak squares behind. So that's the decision Jan has to make. That's why he kind of looked off to the side and frowned a bit. He knows if he doesn't seize the moment now, then White will be very, very comfortable at the minimum.
Yeah. The only way, in response to your question, that I see is like picking up the c-pawn and moving it 1 square. Just activate the light squared bishop, if possible.
If you can, yeah, that would be very nice to try and just improve your pieces as black here after this move. It makes a lot of sense because also the queen the white queen could be a target to a black rook coming in. Oh, here we go. That's more like it.
Simon is happy because
I'm not happy though.
Get in there.
This is too razor sharp, this position. Now it's going to be get nervous moment.
I love positions like this, and you got to. I mean, he's doing the right thing, isn't he? Because we said he's got to go for it. He's got to try to attack, but castling into that open line. It's incredibly risky.
Queenside castle, that's usually very entertaining, right?
It's always very entertaining, especially if the kings both end up on opposite sides. And just before White gets a chance to castle on this flank, Jan's played a very surprising move, I must admit, retreating his queen. I thought maybe the king would tuck away to safety. He stepped back with his queen, hitting this pawn with help from the black bishop.
Now, is there the first thing that springs to mind here? OK, he's gone for the queen exchange. Boo! Boo! Boo!
Sorry. I was surprised. Why didn't he flick in a check?
Yeah.
I know, that's what I thought, because if the bishop blocks, you have this maybe queen coming in the middle as well, and I don't know if that works, but...
Coming to the centre, and now it's a double pin. You're pinning this way, pinning this way. It's really complicated. I guess White could have just defended his bishop here. The other move, very tempting in this position, would be now to offer the queen trade, as Jan has done. And now there's a big trick in the position. If White trades queens, you don't actually capture back yet. You flick in what we call a Zwischenzug, an in-between move. You play bishop takes bishop check first, and when the king moves, only then you take back the queen, and black would have won a bishop in the meantime. So Jan may be missing a small opportunity to disturb Magnus. It's just surprising he rushed that last move. Instead of giving a really annoying check to White's king, he offers the queen trade. And remember, we saw the aim chess stats. Magnus is ahead in the endgames, and we're headed towards that endgame now. The queen trade and Harry marching up the board.
But didn't you say he shouldn't take the queen back right away?
In this position, it was fine, but that's why we thought maybe Jan should have flicked in a check first, and then Magnus couldn't have taken the queens off. So, very surprising that Jan rushed to get the queens off, because that seems to favour Magnus's style. And notice how quickly Magnus has played these last couple of moves. He's happier now.
It's still maybe a little bit tricky for White to decide where his king goes here, even though the queens are off and we're getting to a safer position. Where does White put his king here? Because does he go queenside or kingside? Leave it in the middle? I wouldn't be sure what to do here with the white king.
Leave it in the middle.
Leave it in the middle, yeah. But then your rook's
is that an advantage? Because then Magnus has used a move to castle. Would sort of Jan save a move if he decides not to castle?
Yeah, if Magnus decides not to castle, he could well save a move. And
Magnus.
Yeah. I mean, if White's king just, for example, if the white light squared bishop moves out of the way in front of White's king, then the king could just step up 1 square. It's well protected by pawns. You have to be a bit careful about the diagonals, but If all the rooks disappear, white's king might well be better placed than the black king later.
And this is the reason
And
why
there we
I
go.
said put it in the middle, because I felt that there would be a check.
He has to put it in the middle because he's got no choice. Yeah.
So white's king very safe despite the fact there are still heavy pieces like rooks on the board. I expect the white bishops to try and cover any entry squares that the black rooks want to use to get into white's position.
Well, what a first game in the final. Super intense and interesting.
Exactly, and a brand new position already on move 8, as Jovanka mentioned. That shows the players they're not scared of just going down these new avenues and trying to surprise each other.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of play in this position as well. I mean, do you find it easier playing with knights or bishops, or does it kind of make any difference to you? I mean, I think I have certain positions I play better, and I like it when it's actually more closed. And I think I prefer playing with knights. I don't know what it is, but is there any preference, or not really?
I prefer playing closed positions, but ironically, between the knight and the bishop, I would choose the bishop.
Right.
Just because they're easier to kind of get a grip on. You know, one colour complex, they just move diagonally, backwards, forwards. To this. Yep. And knights are tricky. You know, they jump all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's strange. I mean, this level, the way the top players use the bishops is quite incredible when you know, they really do value the bishop pair so much. I think lower down, the bishop pair is a little bit overrated. I got crucified for saying that once before. I said the bishop pair is overrated, and I think I got, like, you know, so many messages saying, no, you're wrong. But I kind of do. But at top level, the bishop pair is just so important. Yeah. But I mean, it looks fairly even at the moment, to me.
The position looks very even, and it will be fascinating to see who manoeuvres their bishop pair later in more kind of effective ways. So, yeah, I'm inclined to agree with both of you in a way. I like playing against knights, actually. They're easier to dominate. Bishops are so tricky to kind of... Either they're just great attacking pieces or they're great defenders. And, OK, Jan, meanwhile, pushing pawns on the side, he's stronger. It's not just the fact that there's a bit of an imbalance between the kings, but also black has a 3 versus 2 advantage on this side. White has a 4 versus 3 pawn advantage on the other flank. And maybe it's easier for black to push his pawns right now. If white pushes any pawns near the white king, that will leave some weaknesses. So, OK, interesting move by Jan. And en passant is possible here. White can actually capture that pawn as if it just moved 1 square, but that would just be a trade. Maybe we can just show this on the board.
And it happens.
En passant does happen.
Yeah.
Yay!
So the black pawn pushing forward, and en passant means in passing, and white has captured this pawn in passing as if it just moved 1 square.
I had a funny story about the en passant rule. It was one of the only, I think Mickey Adams, like England's top player really of this last 10, 20 years. He lost the game to Neil MacDonald, who's another grandmaster, but much lower rated, because he forgot about the en passant rule. I'm amazed by that last move, but Mickey Adams, one of the best players, he forgot about en passant and the ending, which is quite surprising.
Yeah, and you said you're surprised by this last move. I'm speechless almost.
This last move, yeah.
It looks logical to take with the bishop. You keep these 2 pawns connected. You open up your bishop on a nice diagonal. You open up your rook on a nice line. Instead, Jan capturing back with a pawn. He's isolated his own pawns. And if knights were on the board, this would be a fatal mistake. Maybe without knights on the board, it's not so bad having isolated pawns because they can't be blockaded, they can't be targeted so easily. But still, it looks very surprising, very counterintuitive to me. What do you think about that decision?
I hate it so much, primarily because, you know, take a look at black's king. It's not safe anymore. I mean, you know, you can just see a scenario where if black tries to, like David is highlighting, check is certainly all going to be an idea that Magnus is going to be thinking about. I'm also going to be thinking about targeting that isolated C pawn and just moving the rook to open line. And if it steps forward, well, then black will try to initiate a trade of dark squared bishops. It's a bold move.
White would go for the trade, right?
Yeah, white will go for the trade, yeah. And
he's got a pass pawn, though.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's the one plus
that is the one thing. That's why I think it's
risky.
a brave decision.
Well, we know he's a brave chap already, don't we?
I don't like it, though.
I would never play that move, ever. I mean, but maybe that's why he's sitting there and I'm sitting here, right? I mean, it's quite an incredible idea, because the other move, it looks so natural, doesn't it? Just to played a bishop to a better square. I mean, what about you, David? I mean, would you?
I think I would have captured this way automatically, to be honest. The one downside behind this one, we've talked about the downsides to the other move, but the one downside to taking with the bishop is, I guess, white is able to install a bishop on an outpost, and it's hard to challenge this piece now. This piece stares off at black's pawns, but also completely blocks the open file. So, okay, pros and cons, but that's why, as you mentioned, Simon, these players are sitting there. They're the best in the world because they know when to follow kind of conventional wisdom, but also when to break the rules, when to do something a bit different, a bit surprising. And Jan's capture with the pawn. Maybe, you never know, maybe this pawn will just run through and promote and we'll say, OK, this was strategic genius. But yeah, that's yet to be seen so far. Really tense, this endgame position still.
Yeah. Bar is saying 0.0. What are you saying? Is it very drawish or is anything possible?
I would say both sides have chances, but neither side has the advantage. So still far, far away from a draw. But yeah, I think 0.0 is fair here, as long as we're not thinking it's a draw, as long as we're thinking, OK, chances for both sides.
And will the kings sort of join the attack quite soon, or do we need more pieces off the board before that happens?
I think blacks might well step up the board, kind of support its pawns. You've got to be careful of checks. If the rooks come off, the kings will definitely play a major role in the game. But I would be uncomfortable with Magnus having the king in the way of connecting the two white rooks.
Yeah. But I actually think you're right, Kaya. The kings will probably play a very crucial role in this stage of the game. The white king will play the role because if you take a look at the rook on the right side, it's kind of trapped in by its king. So that white king has to find a safe house. Not be easy because the position is super open. Black's king is looking a little bit shaky as well. And remember, bishop pair is what I wanted to say. I mean, they are going to start putting pressure, and you combine that with a pair of rooks, then okay, who knows what could be happening? You might even see checkmate.
Wow. And on the bottom of the screen right now, you can actually see what the players are fighting for. In addition to $25,000, the winner will take home that NFT trophy, and actually exists in two versions. Also one that will be available or that is available for auction to the highest bidder on chesschamps.io. And there comes a bunch of perks with that NFT trophy that you can buy. Among others, I know there's a lifetime of Chess24 Premium, lifetime of Chessable Pro. And last time I checked, the highest bid was only around $70.
Really? Can I bid, Kaya?
Yeah, well, you can get a lot of stuff if you run into chesschamps.io and bid for that special NFT trophy.
Does it come as a hologram? I mean, could we put it on our table, like Star Wars, kind of like, you know, because then I'm interested, so I quite like that. I could put it on my desk and it'd be like, I'll just stare at it all day.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, just for those perks alone, it's one of the bargains.
Yeah, I know, it's a bargain of a lifetime.
I was reading through the list of things that you get along with the trophy, and it's
loads,
It's incredible.
I mean, the Chess24, the Chessable Pro, all these things are really useful if you want to improve your chess. So, certainly.
Exactly. And also, I mean, in, what do I know, 5 years, 10 years, that NFT trophy, which will also, it will exist in the version that you own, one for Airthings, the sponsor, and one for the winner of the tournament. So you can sort of share very unique stuff, and maybe it will be worth so much money in 5 years or 10 years.
One thing that I've been reading about NFTs, because they've kind of exploded all over the internet and everyone is talking about them, is that they have this concept of Easter eggs. So, you know, you think it's just a normal picture or something, but hidden within it, there's something.
Something special.
Something very special, and that this will later become known, and you can kind of collect those special things.
Exactly.
So, exciting.
Exciting. All right, moves.
Yeah, meanwhile, moves, and really exciting now on the board. White has just given up a piece for a pawn, but he's going to get the piece back. Look at this. White is a piece down, but he's brought his rook across, and that's a pin. That black dark square bishop is about to drop off the board. Really surprising. Jan Nepomniachtchi went for this. I guess his idea at some point over the next couple of turns is to take white's pawn on the side of the board with the black light squared bishop. And it will be level pawns, but look how open the black king is. If white's rook in the corner was somehow able to jump into the action as well, black's king would be in mortal danger. But, OK, really risky strategy from Nepomniachtchi. Is he going to take this pawn, or is he going to try and trade a set of rooks? Either way, black is a pawn down right now, having fallen victim to that pin, and he needs to justify it.
Trade rooks.
Trade rooks.
Trade rooks because I'm a scaredy cat.
I thought you loved grabbing pawns. What's happened? OK, he's gone for the trade of rooks.
Would you have?
I would have thought about grabbing the pawn because if I can get away with it, then I would like to play it. But OK, he's gone for this way to activate and activate those pieces. Maybe that pawn's just going to drop anyway in the position.
Black can take that pawn now.
Yeah.
I think you should take it before it gets defended.
But this looks all right for black, doesn't it? I mean, because all of a sudden, he's got a very nice pass pawn.
We talked about the kings as well. Black's king is going to be a great supporter of the black pawn once it starts rolling down the board. Yeah,
looks good. I mean, pass pawn in the ending is very useful, with that king you mentioned, David, and your rook's all right. I mean, I'd probably take black here,
I would take
if anything.
Black every time. I'm surprised the computer still says 0.0 slightly on black's side now, because it just looks easier for black to play, and black has no risk at all once you capture that white pawn. That black pawn, as we mentioned, it's going to run down the board. The black A pawn, it will act as a distraction. And maybe if white's pieces get too carried away, there we go, white's pawn dropping off. If white's pieces get too carried away trying to stop that remaining black pawn on the left side, then maybe black will switch his attention with his rook towards the white pawns on the other flank. So, OK, level pawns now. We saw a check there, a block by black's bishop. That's quite rare in chess, meeting a check with a check. So white gave a check, then black blocked with his bishop, giving a check. But now, where is the white king going to go? OK, both kings activating. Kaya, it's as if you got your magic ball and spotted the future, because the kings are marching up the board now. I would love to see black's king advance even further right now as well, to maybe step in front of, next to the black bishop, so there's a bit of opposition between the two kings. Maybe black could give another check with his rook. Black could push a pawn. Lots of choice. It's
quite a funny line, isn't it? If you check with a rook and the white king steps up again. I mean, I was thinking on the third rank there that it would actually be checkmate with a pawn, which is just a... I mean, there's been some cases where someone's tried to use their king too much in the ending, and this is one case where you don't bring your king forwards because you always, even in the ending, have to be careful of king's safety, and that'd be quite embarrassing.
And this checkmate has a name. We know it now.
David and Goliath checkmate.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh,
yeah, it's for Simon, David.
Sorry.
Oh, let me just have a think what it's called, yeah? Is it David and Goliath checkmate?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well done, Simon.
Well done, Simon.
Why is it called David and Goliath then?
Because David...
Did you make that up, or...?
No.
No? Right.
It's the truth.
Did David claim it?
David is always the underdog. It's a pawn against a giant, like a king.
Ah, OK.
Yes.
That sounds like it's not a real thing to me. I reckon you made that up. I don't believe it.
Meanwhile, let's catch up with the play. There have been a few moves. So black checking the white king back away from an active post. This white king not as well placed now, and black's rook came down, attacking this white pawn, and Magnus has chosen to defend it with the white rook. Slightly surprising, but then again, I think Magnus's idea is to get active with this rook somehow, and to do that, he might push this pawn forward. For example, if black starts pushing on the side he's stronger, OK, he brings his bishop to the side, then white would push forward, and if we see a trade, then this white rook at least activates. It can maybe threaten some stuff along the fifth rank. It can go towards black's pawns as well. So in this position, instead, Jan brought his bishop to the side. He's threatening a really annoying check. He's trying to break through onto the second rank, not just checking the king, but also trying to snack on the white pawns. There's lots of targets on the second row.
So what is now the goal for both black and white? Is it to promote pawns?
Most likely long-term. While the rooks remain, there's targets for the rooks to try and pick up pawns, like this black rook coming to the second rank. But if the rooks disappear, especially, then black has this pawn, which will run down the board and maybe promote, or at least act as a distraction. And meanwhile, white, it's harder for white because these four, how do you create a passed pawn against black's three over here? It's very, very difficult. Anytime you push a pawn as white, it will just get traded off. So if anything, black is a bit faster with his pawn.
Is actually the double pawns for black kind of good right now?
Yeah, and it's all about knights. We talked about knights having left the board very early in this game. Doubled pawns can be easily targeted by knights, but against bishops, much more difficult to target them. And look at this, Magnus just going for it, trying to open up his rook. We see a trade, and white's rook has activated. Black may well try and win a pawn, though. This is a check. The white king does not want to get cut off on its bottom row, because now this king is in just a terrible position, completely stranded along this line. So it steps forward, gaining time against the black bishop. And black's bishop, once it retreats, not sure where it's going to, but say it takes a step back, then black has targets. Also, some kind of outline of a mating attack. For example, if white gets greedy and goes for the black pawn, we could see a situation where black maybe brings the bishop to the side, this capture, and then Oh, it looks like checkmate may be coming against the white king. You've got to be a bit careful here with white.
What's that one called then?
Jovanka, checkmate expert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to keep asking you now.
No, this one doesn't have a name.
Make one up then. You could have
yes.
tricked me. That would have
The Jovanka checkmate.
The Yovi checkmate.
The Yovi checkmate. Yeah, I like that one actually.
Yeah.
The Yovi checkmate. There you go.
Okay, good. Yeah, you got checkmate. There you go.
We're learning
Thank you.
something.
Good.
It's like having a star,
Yeah.
having a checkmate.
And well, the skeleton of that checkmate is on the board.
Yeah. Black just needs 2 moves. Just maybe push the pawn forward to cover the dark squares, and then you bring the bishop forward to close the cage around the white king. So Magnus has to be super careful. We've seen him get checkmated before on last season's Champions Chess Tour several times. In an endgame, though, he tends to be quite alert. So, okay, this is really scary. Magnus ignoring Black's plans and just going for the pawns instead.
So, yeah, it's a bit scary, isn't it? So if you go for the checkmate you mentioned, I guess he can get a check in, can he?
Yeah, but I'm just looking at which is the most correct move order, and I think David's got the right one up there. Move
It's
the bishop.
not clear at
It's
all.
not- yeah.
If you move the bishop, then after rook takes pawn, it looks like you're closing the door and about to checkmate white. But as Simon said, you can flick in a check with white, and wherever the king goes, the white rook, it can't
Still
step back,
very
actually.
dangerous, yeah.
No, it
Yeah,
can't
this
step
is,
back because this way you get checkmated too. Oof.
Well, that's
Suddenly Magnus playing with fire.
Well, you win the rook, don't you, that way? Yeah. So
Yeah.
actually, that's
after-
not so clear, is it?
Actually, yeah, it's complicated
Yeah, it's
after
'cause
this
bishop
check.
E2
I thought the white rook would drop here, but
Yeah.
suddenly there's a pin at the very end, and
Wow.
still very, very complicated position. This endgame. Has Magnus calculated this all? Has Jan calculated this all? This is the question. In the current position, Magnus has to decide: can he take this pawn, or is he going to get checkmated? If that happens, I would hate to be white right now.
I checked the computer options, and guess what? There's only one move to survive in the game, and it's actually not capturing the pawn.
So this capture would lose.
Yeah, that would lose. The best move is actually to attack the rook with the bishop.
Wow, this is not easy. Moving this bishop off a very safe square and moving it to the center to destabilize the black rook. It looks like you simply lose time. But I guess the idea is after the black rook moves, captures a pawn, for example, white's king is free to run out of the corner. Magnus.
Got to find this move, though. It's got to find this move.
Yeah, there we see Stockfish, the computer confirms only one move, and it's this one. Everything else gives black a big, big advantage.
Wow, what is Magnus then doing now? And he finds it. Impressive.
He always finds it, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Always.
Just when you think you've got your hopes up and you're about to checkmate the world champion, he goes,
he
well,
just finds
no.
it. Yeah. Not going to happen today. So.
No.
That's the thing. Maybe he was just forced to find good moves. I think we've mentioned this theme before. Sometimes, no matter what the strength, if you force your opponent to find the only moves, they most likely will, just by process of elimination. Okay, though, still, to me, it looks hard to defend with white. It feels like black will be the favourite once that black pawn starts pushing. But then again, Nepomniachtchi shaking his head, maybe just frustrated that he underestimated this defence, or that he was maybe banking on Magnus missing it.
You don't really need a computer when you've got Jan, do you? I mean, you can just look at his face, and it will tell you the assessment of the position, right? So it's the Jan bar. So I like it, you know. And you can see he missed. Well, I don't know if he missed that move, but the position's not as strong as he thought it was. I think, yeah. So okay.
But yeah, fair play to Magnus finding that one.
Yeah.
And there we go. The white king, before it's too late, before it gets completely trapped, has run away and gains time against the black bishop. That's the justification behind white's previous move.
I've noticed that Jan very rarely, I don't know if I've ever heard him speak, nice about his own chess playing. He's always very negative about his own games.
Yeah,
Is he a perfectionist, basically?
He's definitely a perfectionist. He holds himself to high standards. Yeah. He's his own fiercest critic. And actually, I think that's the same for lots of sportsmen. You very rarely hear Magnus as well praise his own play, despite the fact Magnus often plays great games where he controls it all. Often later they're saying, I lost control for one move, or this one slip, maybe it was only the third best move, not the top. I mean, I wish I was as harsh on myself. Maybe that's why I'm not at their level. But either way, it's just about finding that balance between enjoying chess, but also pushing yourself to be better every time.
It's kind of what we heard from young Pragnananda as well, right? When we talked to him after he won against Magnus Carlsen, the whole world has been praising him. But he was a little bit annoyed about that game because there were some moves he didn't like, and he was more happy about his win against Levon Aronian.
Exactly. I was surprised at that because I thought he would just be, absolutely overwhelmed with happiness. But no, he was just simply, well, you know, these are the things I did wrong. Now I need to go back to the board and fix them. So, I mean, I was really impressed by his kind of learning mindset that he obtained. And also just not to have these big swings of emotion, because when you do have those kind of emotional thoughts on the board, they do affect your play. You know, you either get stressed, you get happy, you let like happy thoughts run away, and then you think you're winning, but then you're not. And then, and then just affects on how resourceful you can be.
Yeah. And I guess emotions was what got in the way for Jan Nepomniachtchi in the World Championship match. Very emotional there.
Yeah, exactly. You often saw him leaving the board, maybe just because he was struggling to control his nerves. Clearly, between the games, maybe at night, in the morning, he just wasn't able to get in a rhythm, be himself, and fully relax. And it's difficult. World Championship, it's like a pressure cooker where everything is heightened 100 times. So it's understandable that nerves got in the way, or that
He seems a much more emotional player, doesn't he, Jan, than not just Magnus Carlsen, but a lot of the players playing this tournament. Maybe he's the most emotional, him and Esipienko. They're both very, show a lot of emotion when they're playing, which can be good and bad, I guess. You get quite excited, your energy levels can go up, but they can also fade very quickly.
Nice for the fans.
Yes, nice for us watching. Meanwhile, some checks forcing the Black King potentially to a worse square, where it will continue to get targeted. The Black King now in the middle of the board, but once White's bishop steps away from this attack, I'm expecting it to just take a step back. Okay, in this direction is fine too. Now the problem is for Black that his pieces aren't coordinating to support that Black pawn on the A file. Next move, for example, if Black goes and gets greedy and takes one of the White pawns with his rook, then White's rook is just going to step back and gobble up that Black A pawn. And this one might be heading towards a draw in the next few moves. Looks like great defense by Magnus Carlsen.
Yeah, but now we can sort of see that Jan's move, which I don't think any of us were going to play, taking on c6 of the pawn, it worked out incredibly well, because if anyone had chances after that, it was actually Jan. Magnus had to find that quite tough defensive move, which he did obviously find. And, well, OK, Black is a pawn up here, but White's so active.
Not even a pawn up.
No.
It's
no, it's
material.
not. OK, right, yeah. So it's,
we're racing towards a draw now. We're about to see it any second. We're just going to see checks. The position's about to repeat itself. The first game of the final ends in a draw.
Wow, Magnus Carlsen with the white pieces. It is a draw, this first game. In the first match, in the final, Magnus logging off Jan Nepomniachtchi.